business like show business like no business I know. Actually, I don't know. But this week, we have a man who really does know. He is Mr. Show Business. He is Mr. Impresario. You'll know who he is. He is Professor Jonathan Shalit OBE. Welcome. Professor or Jonathan, what would you rather me call you?
I think you can call me Professor, Keith.
Okay, Professor. Okay.
I jest.
Oh, no, I don't mind calling you Professor.
You may call me whatever you wish.
Okay.
Funnily enough, my family call me Shalit.
Okay. Oh, really?
Some of my friends and colleagues jokingly call me Prof. Some call me Professor. Some call me Jonathan. So whatever you wish, whatever your viewers would like to hear.
I'll call you OBE, how about that?
Whatever you wish.
Okay, all right.
But what I would say is the way you did that intro, you make me sound very old. Great song, There's No Business Like Show Business. It was like 50 years ago. I work in the modern entertainment business, and I don't regard myself in show business. I regard myself in the business of taking talented people and taking their talents in a bigger way to the world.
Okay, well, I'm interested to hear all about that. What I'm really interested to hear about, because you're in a business where you've needed chutzpah, audacity, courage, ballsiness, which is what this is about. And what I wanted to ask you, first of all, have you always been that from a kid? Did you always have that edge, that chutzpah growing up? Or is it something you've learned?
I think we all start life with certain traits. I think some people have different traits. I think when you start out in life, you're predestined where the kind of person you are is going to take you. However, as you progress and associate with people and meet people, you learn life skills. You learn how to interact, you learn how to deal with certain situations, and you learn what are the right and wrong things to do. I think what life or your birth destiny doesn't prepare you for is who you're going to meet along the way. And a lot of who you meet along the way helps guide your future. But the character traits you have are always going to be an important part of that future. So what you do in life is going to be a combination of who you are as a person, the traits you've got, and
nature and nurture.
Yes, and then the kind of people you meet along the way, and of course the opportunities you create for yourself. Because I think you grow up in a certain, wherever you grow up, your parents put you into a certain school, you grow up in a certain community. Some people's lives continue as an evolution of that community. Some people radically change their lives by making a really bold step and going somewhere where their family and community haven't been. And I think for me, my family and community had no background, nothing to do with the work I do now. So therefore, I made the bold step to create opportunities in the business I'm now in, which combined with the traits I had, have allowed me to be the success I am.
Getting into the business, as you said, you had no previous background. And from what I read, you lived next door to Michael Winner, is that right?
Yes, I lived in Kensington where I grew up, and my parents, as next door neighbour, as you say, were Michael Winner, so that was an interesting man to meet occasionally.
And from what I also read, he told you, forget about show business, go and get a job and be a lawyer or something. Did that deter you?
Well, when I was 17 or 18, I knocked on his door and delivered a letter saying, could I please come and see you for some career advice, to be fair to Michael.
Which is ballsy and chutzpah, correct?
And my phone went a few days later, and it was Michael Winner on the end of the phone saying, Michael Winner here, you wrote to me, do you want to come and see me now? And yes, I was across the road in my bedroom working and studying for my exams then, so of course I put on a nice shirt and jacket and trousers and went across the road to Michael Winner's house and was greeted by his butler and shown to Michael's massive study, and with his pictures and his awards and all the wonderful photographs and everything he's achieved decorated behind him. So to an 18-year-old, he was a very impressive global film tycoon, and I sat there asking career advice, and his career advice was very clear. What's a nice Jewish boy like you wanting to be in show business? You're bright enough to go to university, get something like a law degree, be a lawyer, you have a proper career then.
And how did you feel coming away from that?
I felt the same as I did with anyone trying to put me off my course. I appreciated his advice, but it just inspired me more to do what I wanted.
Well, that's an interesting point you make, because many people would have been deterred by that advice, and that's indicative of where you are today, and that it almost inspired you to greater heights. Would you say that kind of detractor would actually have inspired you and motivated you more? Yeah.
Well, I think with Michael Winner, he was a provocative character. Of course, his achievements were stellar. And when I sat there with him and he gave me that advice, I was thinking to myself, but you're a nice North London Jewish boy as well, and you've made a success of entertainment business, so why shouldn't I? So his advice sort of contradicted who and what he was, because to a certain extent he came from the same background as me. But he went on to do what he wanted. I think he went to Cambridge in his case and studied a degree, but he was a massive intellect,
yes.
And he went on to be a phenomenal global film director. So he showed to me you can do what you want. So his advice was the opposite of what he'd achieved himself.
And it's interesting, I read another story about you, which I don't know the ins and outs, which was when you were in a job, you gave a letter to a window cleaner to give to your boss. Can you tell me a little bit more about that one?
That story is that when I was a youngster in my early 20s trying to get a job in advertising, they didn't go to university. All the top advertising agencies had graduate trainees, and I simply couldn't get onto a trainee course because I wasn't a graduate, or certainly not a quality agency. And there was a small agency that was part of the Saatchi and Saatchi group, and I was targeting all the agencies, and I heard there was a vacancy at this particular agency, and I couldn't get in to see anybody. I wrote the letters, made the phone calls, so I thought I'd hand deliver a letter to the boss. And by coincidence, when I went round, there was a window cleaner cleaning the windows, one of those sort of window boxes that go up and down with ropes. And I worked out I got the security to tell me which window was the chairman of the company. And I gave the letter to the window cleaner and asked him would he be kind enough to knock on the chairman's window and give him the letter. So the window cleaner gave the letter to the chairman of the agency for me. So the chairman of the agency looked out the window, and there I was downstairs, and I waved at him and he invited me up.
And then?
I got the job.
It just goes to show you, I mean, you're in a business where you cannot survive without that level of cheek, boldness, and from what I'm seeing, you've got it in droves, and that's probably why you're sitting here as a well-known agent yourself now. And what I would be curious to know is some of your clients, some of their stories that you know of, or maybe you've influenced them in order to go out and do something utterly ballsy, or maybe you know they have done something utterly ballsy to get them where they are, to get noticed. What stories spring to mind, Jonathan?
I don't want to talk about any clients in particular, but I think traits of talent that becomes massively successful, the people that become hugely successful and also stay top of their game are people who have a combination of a fantastic work ethic and a fantastic talent. And I think of people like, and we work across music, television, sport, acting. So, because my thought process is that, yes, of course, each individual talent has a skill set that relates to their business. But the industry as a whole is such that a few people at the top make the decisions. So the more areas you work in, because all areas cross over, the more you can help your talent. So I think about the fantastic boxer, double gold Olympian, European champion, world champion, Commonwealth champion, Nicola Adams, who got a second gold in the Rio Olympics, who I represent, and is just turning pro. Nicola is a street fighter from Leeds. She went to a boxing gym in her single years, fell in love with the sport, and has worked so hard, year after year, month after month, week after week, day after day. Nicola is currently training for her first professional fight. She's absolutely resolute about only focusing on that. So therefore, she won't accept an invitation anywhere, she won't go anywhere, she's in training, she wants to win her first professional fight. And I liken that to example for the great diver Tom Daley. After he had his initial success, he became a TV star, and then he popped up all over the place making TV programs and
Do you represent Tom Daley?
No, I don't represent Tom. I couldn't tell this anecdote if I did, but he's an example of why a talent can lose their edge. Because Tom should have won gold at the last Olympics. His form was very poor as he went into the Olympics.
The last 2 Olympics, actually.
You're correct. And the point I make is he got distracted and wasn't focusing on what he was best at. And I think you have to focus on what you're best at. If he had focused on being the best diver in the world, he'd have retained his gold. But he chose to embrace celebrity, stardom, and all the opportunities he got from being famous. Unlike Jessica Ennis, who equally was a pin-up tabloid from the London Olympics, but she continued to focus, as did Dame Kelly Holmes, as did Paula Radcliffe. All these people could have broken away from their core skill and become stars in the vertical. They didn't, and they went on to have more success. The point I make there is, if you are going to be the best of what you can be, yes, you should, of course, embrace all the opportunities that come in, because you've got to make a living, you've got to pay for your family, and everyone has the right to do whatever they want. However, you still need to be the best at something, because that gives you validity. And I think the talent I work with, like Catherine Jenkins OBE, the fantastic soprano from Wales, she's completely focused on what she does. Yes, she has broken out and done other things. Yes, she's come very well known. Yes, she helps charities. Yes, she just gets involved in media opportunities. But her absolute primary focus is singing. If she's got a show coming up, her only prominence and priority in her mind is giving the best show for the audience, and everything else will be cancelled if it interferes with that. And I think the same with a news broadcaster or television broadcaster, like Lorraine Kelly at The Daily Show on ITV. Again, she's a very well-known lady, but the most important thing is her Daily Show on ITV, and nothing will get in the way of that. And if it will get in the way of that, she says no. Dame Joan Collins, aged 83, has just made another movie. Remarkable lady. And for all the tabloid exposure Dame Joan's had over the years, she's resolutely remained focused on her acting. And when you take away everything else, at the very core of it is a great actress.
You've shown tenacity, courage, boldness to get where you are. But along the way there must have been some negative self-talk, some knockbacks. What knocks you back? What have your fears been? And what are your fears?
I think the one thing you can't predict is the reaction of some of what you do. One of the things you can't plan for is what people might say about you. And the challenge of being or doing what I do is having as many people as possible feel positive about what you do, because inevitably when you give people advice and represent them and talk about them and do things on their behalf, sometimes things will happen that they don't like or don't understand, or someone who doesn't know you might pass judgment or opinion.
How does that affect you though?
I think it affects you in the sense that sometimes clients might question you based on hearsay or based on not liking the consequences of what you've done, albeit you've done your best and you've made the right decision. Of course, we all make mistakes sometimes. That's not to say I don't make a mistake occasionally, but my whole focus from the moment I wake up in the morning is doing the best by my clients. It's the only focus I have all day. So even if I get it wrong, it's with the total ambition of doing right. And I think, of course, again in our business, there's a lot of jealousy. I think there's jealousy of anyone who's successful. And because I'm in a business people like to talk about, and I have some prominence, like the fact you're interviewing me today, some people will listen to this interview and warm towards me. Some people will look at it and be a bit jealous you've interviewed me rather than one of my competitors, and they might rubbish the interview, and one of my competitors might be snide about it and say, did you see Jonathan Shalit doing that ridiculous thing the other day? I remember some years ago, the Sunday Telegraph magazine did 3 or 4 pages on me being an Uber manager, and I got a lovely number of comments.
That's not a manager of any Uber drivers, that's an Uber manager. Sorry to interrupt.
An Uber manager of talent. and I went to the Ivy for lunch, and the manager came up to me and said, great article, fantastic, congratulations. thought you might like to know so-and-so who had just embraced me 5 minutes before, kissing and hugging me, saying that was one of my competitors, had actually walked into the other restaurant that day, cussing me, saying, why is Jonathan Shalit being featured as an Uber manager? He's not. I've achieved far more. He's terrible. So in other words, my competitor didn't respond well to the article in the Sunday Telegraph magazine and wanted to rubbish it to other people. And I think...
Did that bother you?
I think it probably bothered me then. It doesn't bother me now, because now that I'm a father and I've got 2 stepchildren who are like my own children to me, I've learned, and I think this is an advantage in age, is worry about those that love you. Don't concern yourself with those that don't. Because as we go on in life, if we spend our life, particularly with dailymail.co.uk and the comments beneath articles that get written, the vile comments by people who've got nothing better to do, you have to sort of think about those who love you and those that matter to you. If you worry about the whole world's opinion of you, you'll never relax or be happy, because half the world will always be against you.
There's
I'll tell you a funny story.
Oh.
So Ricky Gervais, I saw Ricky Gervais, lovely man Ricky Gervais. I saw him at the American Ambassador's residence, a party the American Ambassador had a few months ago. I remember we're having a nice conversation about life, and I know Ricky, and he's a great guy. I don't know how the conversation went down this line, route, but we're talking about, the 40 million people that love him and the 40 million people that hate him. He said, there's no difference. He said, when I started out, 200 people loved me, 200 people hate me. 40 million love me now, 40 million hate me now. I can't remember the exact number, but the point I'm making is he's got tens of millions of people love him and go to his shows, pay money to see his shows. He gets booked for major awards events. And then the other half hate him. But the reality is the half that love him have made him very wealthy and successful. And therefore, you worry about those that love you.
I've got one other question before we wrap up, actually, which is just more something I'm interested in. You see a lot of celebrities and so forth having a lot of issues with personal issues, drugs, drink, emotional problems. And I've got my own idea of why that is. I often speak to audiences and tell them, it takes guts to be different. Why are you trying so hard to fit in when you were born to stand out? However, my take is that many celebrities, and you'd know better than I would, is that they can't be themselves and they're not at peace with themselves. Do you think it takes a certain amount of guts to be introspective enough and to feel comfortable in your own skin, particularly for them?
I think that anyone to be successful in their life, and by success I include happiness within yourself, it's accepting who you are and accepting what you've got and being happy. Like with Adam and Eve when they bit the apple, and the consequence was, having bit the apple, they wanted more and more and more. The challenge a lot of people have in this age of amazing lives being seen in magazines, on television, so many people want more than they've got. And if you always want more than you've got, you can never be truly content and happy. I would also add the other challenge of being someone well known is a lot of well known people, because of their talent, are actually really great, decent people who haven't changed that much. You read in the media or the press, or you hear so-and-so's changed, but actually often they haven't changed. It's the people around them have changed in the way they react to what their long-term friend or their long-term family member has become. And people around them get jealous, people around them treat them differently. So that's also the challenge of someone well known. It's dealing with people around you who change towards you because you've become well known, when you've actually remained the same. There is no right and wrong. There is, like everything in life, it's not one rule for all. Different people have different makeup.
Well, I think we could talk for hours, Jonathan, because you've certainly got a lot of wisdom, knowledge that I'd love to tap into, but of course we don't have time. You don't have time, I know that. On this Cojones Icons series, we always let our guests, or we don't let our guests leave without the Cracker Jack pencil equivalent, which is of course the Cojones special edition t-shirt. I don't know if it is the right size, but there you go. There's your Cojones special edition t-shirt.
Grow a pair for success.
Indeed, indeed. Well, you don't need to, because you've already got that. But
thank you, Keith.
And of course, the standard pair of steel balls for somebody, of course, who has them.
And what do I do with these steel balls?
Well, you can do whatever you like. You can just remind yourself that you got them. But many people, I believe in China, they play with them. Exactly. You can do that. You can juggle your balls or whatever you want to do with them. But it's just a reminder of who you are. And we thank you very much for having us.
Nice to see you.
Very nice to meet you.